welcome back, or welcome for the first time if you've not been here before. My name is Shelley Pryor. I am a realistic watercolorist in Ontario, Canada, and every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Toronto time, I will do a live stream demo on watercolor. So today we're going to be continuing with a theme I started a couple of weeks ago where we are working on painting children. I'm not talking about portraits and that sort of thing, but I am talking about children at play, doing their thing at the beach, whatever. So today's topic is going to be three children in one scene. So children are not always seen alone, right? So they're usually in groupings. So let's jump into what I'm going to be talking about. So this is the reference picture that I am using, and these are kids at the beach. The one thing about painting or getting a reference picture that is at a beach or something like that, is usually you've got a nice uncluttered background. And during the summertime, kids are always wearing brightly colored clothes and things like that. Now, as it happens, these kids were all wearing blue. I think this family was doing like a portrait at the beach or something, so they were all color coordinated. But let me zoom in a little bit more. There we go. So they're all in blue, which is fine. But if you wanted to change that, you could. I'm going to be painting on, this is a travel book actually. This one is Arsh 140 pound or 300 gram cold pressed paper. The book is 6 by 10 inches or 15 centimeters by 25 centimeters. Comes on a nice little coil ring. So you can flip the page right over, all the way over, without worrying about breaking a spine on the book or something like that. And so I'm going to be working on this, and I'll be using an HB pencil, this beautiful pencil. I keep forgetting to use it, but I have been using it quite a bit. This is made by one of our viewers, and this is made by Angela. I'm not sure if Angela wants me to change or share her last name, so I will just tell you it's made by Angela, who very kindly sent this to me, including a lovely pen that she made. So it's an absolutely beautiful instrument. I'll be using some Da Vinci watercolor. Now, the brand isn't so important, but what is important here is I've got a couple of different yellows, a couple of different reds, a couple of different blues. Now over here, I have a couple of neutrals. So something sort of like this one's a raw sienna, this one's a burnt sienna. This is very dark to see on the camera, but we have two greens here. One is a sap green. This one is a perylene green, which is a really dark shadow, cool green. Then I have, this one's a purple. And yeah, I can make my purples by mixing these colors. I can make my greens by mixing these colors, but sometimes in landscape or if I'm painting outdoors, it just helps to have a start on your mix so that you can either use it directly or you can add something to it to shift it a little bit. But the idea is that, it's faster and more convenient because it's already pre-mixed for us. I don't use a lot of these pre-mixed colors when I'm doing like an actual painting. I like to kind of keep all the colors in the same family. I usually use a very limited palette. I'm just sharing what I'm using with my plein air palette here. So this one is a purple color, and this one is Payne's Gray. Now I've added, there was a little slot. This is made from an eyeshadow. I just sanded off all the stuff that was printed on the front of it, and I scuffed up the inside here so I can use it for a palette. But what I decided to add in this little slot, which was the applicator brush, I guess, is I put some neutral tint. And I often get asked about whether or not neutral tint is an actual paint. Yes, it is. You can buy it, and it's called neutral tint. It's a softer gray than Payne's gray, and it is a little bit warmer than Payne's gray, which is a very cold gray because it's got a lot of blue in it. So neutral tint is a little bit more on the purple side and is a little bit gentler, but you can both are very good if you need to get colors dark. And one color that's a little hard to mix is this turquoise color, so I put that one in too. These are all hard. Usually if I'm working from my big palette, this one here, I will soften up all of my paints by putting a few drops of water into each of my wells to let the paint get softened up. But I'm not going to do that here because I'm sketching. Right, so I'm treating this, I am in my studio, but I'm treating this as if I were outdoors. Now, I actually was going to go outdoors today, but the forecast was rain. And a minute ago, the sun came out, but it is overcast again. So, it's one of those things where it could go either way. And so I didn't want to take the chance. All right, so a couple of questions have come up already. So we've got Virginia's asking, adding gum arabic to older watercolor paint in the palette, can I add it directly or dilute? Absolutely dilute. If you add too much gum arabic to your paint, gum arabic, for those that may not know, is the binder for watercolor, and it will go very glossy. It's weird, but it'll make your paint go glossy if you use too much of it. So use it very sparingly. If I'm softening up my palette and I want to add some gum arabic, I add it to the water that I'm going to use to put into my wells. So I will put a few drops in this container, which is half full. I can't tip it obviously, but in this container, it's maybe that deep. And I would add maybe 5 or 6 drops of gum arabic, no more than say 10, but I would add about that much. And if you're doing that each time you're softening up your paints, you're introducing gum arabic each time. So any of the gum arabic that gets evaporated from your paints, then you can replenish it that way, but don't use it direct. It will most certainly make it go. Have you ever seen a slug trail? That's what it kind of makes your watercolors look like. All right, so you may con Douglas has said, hi Shelley, would you prepare a series of paid tutorials on your website about painting in-depth portraits and full body people, soft translucent fabrics over skin? I would love to see you teaching us. Yeah, those are definitely some things that I can look into adding to my list of tutorials. I haven't done any recorded tutorials for a while, but I have been thinking about them. I just haven't had a lot of sort of free time. I started my online tutorials during COVID when everything else was shut down, but everything else is hopping again, and so it makes it a little bit hard to fit all of that in. But yeah, that's certainly something that I can do. I will generally do it as a live workshop, and then the recording of that live workshop is what is in the recorded workshop. So it's not like I just sit in my studio and do it. I don't edit out anything. You see all my mistakes if I make any, and that sort of thing. But you get to hear all the questions that come up at the time. So it's sometimes you get a lot of information just from questions being answered. Can I repeat what makes my paint glossy? Gum arabic. Gum arabic. It is this stuff here. It's a little bit amber in color. It is a thicker. It's kind of like syrup. It's almost like a syrup consistency. When you get your tubes of watercolor paint, you add gum arabic. It has gum arabic in it. Sometimes when you take the lid off, you'll see an accumulation of some of that gum arabic. So it kind of looks, some people say it looks oily on the top, but it's the gum arabic. But too much will make it shiny. All right, so let's get to our painting here. So I am going to start, I've turned my books this way because the format of this scene is vertical. And I mentioned last week, in case you want to look up that video, last week I was painting this little girl. And I talked about the importance of the head basically will balance over top of the weight, wherever the feet are planted. So usually, now this is not a steadfast rule, and especially if you have kids in action or something like that, but people that are standing generally will place their weight over their feet. So I don't want to put the head way off kilter. Or the majority of the body off kilter. It kind of looks like they're falling over. Lorraine's asking, why would I need to add gum arabic to your paints? Because eventually your paint's in your palette. If you let your paints dry out, they can start to crack and get crumbly. So before that gets too cracked and crumbly, you can add a little bit of gum arabic to keep this nice sort of creamier consistency. As you use your paints and your water and so on, as you use your paints in your water, and it keeps evaporating, and then you add more water and so on, you're eventually depleting some of the gum arabic, so you want to replenish it. So I'm going to start with the girl in the middle here first, because she's more central, and she's not quite dead center. I'm looking, where the middle of the page is here. She's not quite center. She's shifted over just a little bit from center there, and the weight is on this foot. So as I begin the gesture drawing, okay, so I will begin with her head. I'm going to look at her spine is coming down this way, but the weight is here. So her hips would be here, but the weight is sort of directly below her head, even if her head is turned. Okay, so that's figure one. Then we have another figure, and I'm looking at the head height to see, and then I guess that's really light. I'm going to do this a little bit darker, and then I'll lighten it up, because a lot of these lines I don't want to have in my finished painting. But this was the angle of the spine. Then we have the weight over this leg, and this leg is sort of just extended out a little bit, the weight isn't really there. So her shoulders might be here, that kind of thing. And so that's sort of how I will start, how the person is standing. Then for the next figure, the one to the right here, I'm looking in relation to her shoulders, maybe just a little higher than that. And this little person has their weight more on their left foot. You can see that this leg is bent, so the weight is being distributed more to the left foot. So it's almost the opposite, isn't it? So the pants are falling down a little bit here, so it's kind of cute. And then this leg is bent. Now, you notice I haven't really worried about the arms or anything yet. I'm really trying to get the overall balance of the children to begin with. Now we have another little character, and this person's turned sideways. And in relation to the height of these other children, I would say, well, about here. It's sort of just, if I follow the top of the, like the angle of the shoulder here, it almost comes to the top of the head. All right, so now we have the figure leaning forward a little bit, but then the knees are bent. And again, we have the feet are taking up the weight here. Okay, so we don't see the hips in the same way because this person's turned the other way. But now that I have sort of the placement on the page, the approximate proportions, right? Like I have this person is taller than this person's taller than this, etc., etc. Then and only then is when I want to go in and start talking about, refining a little bit, refining these shapes. So let's start again with the girl in the middle. So she has her shoulders coming down here. She's got, well, I'm gonna maybe do the torso first. Okay, so the torso is here, waist, those shorts are here. And sometimes what I will do is, if I don't want to have all these sketch lines on my actual book or on my page that I'm working on, then what I'll do is I'll do all of this sketching like on a piece of copy paper or something like that, just a blank piece of paper. And then I'll transfer a clean drawing onto this. But when I'm working in my sketchbook, I don't do that. I just work directly onto the paper. So I will generally keep my drawing quite light until I am sort of ready to lock in my lines. There's no sense in doing everything dark only to have to erase it all. Okay, so the tapering of the legs there, they're not refined. I still haven't got the whole shape and everything, but I'm trying to get the way the arms kind of back here a little bit, like sort of back toward, like she's got her elbow past her spine kind of thing. And she's got a little hand here. Now remember, a hand can be just kind of a box, thinking about this part of the hand. For now, that's all it needs to be. The other arm, it's almost blocking this little guy's head. So it's sticking out a little bit. Slightly, it's got to be slightly higher than this one. So this one needs to come down a little bit and that one up a little bit. Okay. Her head's facing down. Can't really see her face, but I can see sort of where her hair is. And I've mentioned it last week. Don't be a creepy person and take a lot of photos of people at the beach without permission. You want to get the candid shot, but it's good to ask the parent afterwards. Look, I'm an artist. I took this picture of your children and I'd love to paint it if you're okay with that, and show them the picture that you have. Offer to send it to them if you would like. It's a kind of a nice little way to network as well. Maybe they'll be interested in buying your painting. So there are benefits to approaching the parent, but most of all, it's to get permission. So the second child's behind the first one. So I drew the one in front first because it's easier to draw the person behind when you know what you have to draw behind. All right, so this little torso kind of comes, oh boy. I think I have to bring something over here because there's hardly any gap here at all. And I had a much bigger gap. So that immediately tells me that there's something something a little wonky here. So I'm going to have to bring this over a little bit more. So that's coming over a little bit more, and so is her shirt. I love the angle here and then a downward angle here. And then the hips become a little bit more level, and then we have sort of the stance of the weight on this leg. Now, I've got a lot of sketchy lines growing on here, and I don't want to have all of those in my finished painting, so I will have to erase some of these, but this is where I need to begin to establish where things belong. Okay, so we have some wrinkles in the pants here. But somewhere in all of those wrinkly pant legs are the weight of that child. So they are standing, placing their weight in on this leg. Now this little dude has his elbow up. So shoulder down. Little guy still has his diapers on. I think these kids were collecting shells, as I recall, and they were having a grand old time. It was very late in the day, so we don't have bright sunshine in this case. We were kind of waiting for an evening show to start, and there was this family there, but I think they had been there for a while. They were sort of winding down their day as we were just beginning our evening with the live entertainment, but here we go. So I got those feet uneven here. Let's get those evened up. So this guy's in front, so this foot is a little higher than her foot is going to be, right? Because he's standing in front of her, so that foot is going to be a little higher. And the leg is bent, so the leg is sort of, or the foot is a little bit angled outward. Just a bit. Okay, and our last little dude. So this little guy he's looking down. We can see just sort of almost a little bit of the profile. But what I'm seeing here is the cheek, and then the chin. So we do see some of this little guy's neck. It's not seen in these ones, the other two, because their hair is in the way, but this little guy, you can see a little bit of the neck there. And now I'm not going to draw all of the creases or anything like that. This is a dangerous part of the drawing because you need to be focused on the main shapes. So it's very tempting to get carried away with the detail. This is not the time for that. All right, so we've got the arm that comes down. And as children go, their arms are really short, right, relative to an adult, because the arms haven't elongated yet. The bones haven't grown long enough for their arms to be long. So they have these chubby little arms, which are really cute, but Okay, so I like the little bum sticking out here. This is kind of cute. And the short, and the legs are the same kind of deal, right? They're proportionately, excuse me, shorter than an adult. When you look at the head size compared to the length of the limbs, they're much more condensed. And this is one of the reasons that people end up having their children drawings or paintings look too old, because the arms and everything are sort of what we see when we look down at our own arms, excuse me, extra long. Well, maybe not extra long in my case. I'm kind of a shorty, but okay, so this comes down below the cuff. Sorry, excuse me, I need some water here. And the front of the legs kind of comes down it comes down a little straighter, but the little bum is sticking out a bit there. And these legs, and actually the bottoms of his feet are pretty close to, like, he's kind of right beside her. So I gotta lower the feet here a little bit, which means I'm gonna have to change some proportions that I had. So I have to rearrange this a little bit. This arm will be a little longer than I had it. And again, I'm going to do boxes for the hand just for now. This little guy's shorter than the other little guy, so my guess is he's still got his diapers as well. So that probably accounts for why he's got such a bulky bottom here. I'm going to move this out a little bit more. So yeah, these are things I look at. His hand is not at his side. It's sticking out from his tummy a little bit. So I got to move this outward a little bit. Okay, so I have a reasonably good placement, size, proportion, gesture at this point. I don't start refining anything until I'm happy with this part of it. So this is where so many people just get distracted. You know, we want to get to the detail. Yes, it's hard to be patient, but getting the good foundation will ultimately end in a better drawing and likewise a better painting. So now I need to do a little bit of refinement. So I'm going to come in with a little bit more of a heavier line where I can see her hairline. And at the same time, as I'm going along, I'm going to erase the unnecessary things. So we don't need to see that circle I did for her head. We just need to see the hair. I don't need to see all of these lines that are in here, so I can erase the unnecessary parts of that. Her sleeve, her elbow. We don't need a line down the middle of her back anymore, so I'll erase that one. But I really want to keep that angle. I think that sort of S shape to how she's standing there is what I really enjoy about this and the different poses that they're in. So we did talk a lot about the drawing or the painting part of it, which we of course will get to, but I wanted to tell you a little bit about what appeals to me and what I'm looking for when I'm finding a subject to draw or paint. And that's one of the things that I kind of like. So this short comes down very close to her leg, but it flares out a little bit. Angles down. The seam between your legs. Then we've got the other part, which shows a little more here. And I'm going to come down and I'm going to really notice on legs and arms, okay, when I'm painting or when I'm drawing out the legs and arms. I'm looking for things like, oh, that dips in a little bit, and then it comes out a little bit, and then it goes in again. So you look for things like in and out, how much it comes out, that sort of thing, because all of these ins and outs on limbs are muscles, right? So here we have the calf muscle, you know, and down here we have this like Achilles tendon, and you know, the back of the thigh and the part where the knee bulges out a little bit. So we need to pay attention to some of those little things. It's a really small thing, but boy, can it ever make a difference. I was just checking the chat here just to see if I have any questions here. So far, so good. And I'm going to come in on this, and then it comes out again where the calf muscle is, and then back in again where the ankle is. There's the ankle bone. And the inside of the thigh goes out, in, slightly out, and comes back into the ankle again. Don't think I did it quite as well as I would have liked there. Just let me do a little adjusting. And this is where I'll fuss a little bit, because I really want to get the structure of the leg looking correct. It takes a bit of practice, and sometimes I do have to you know, do a little adjusting and a little erasing and that sort of thing to get it right, but I do want it right. So okay, it's the next leg. Again, looking for those subtle differences. There's the out part where, you know, where the knee bends, comes in, and then we have the calf muscle. Depending on how the leg is turned, it will protrude more than other times. This is a much more gentle curve. Okay, so I'm getting okay with this drawing so far. I will just get a little bit here with her ankle bone and her heel. Don't see much of her foot because part of it's submerged in the sand. I think probably the end of her foot is under the sand there. Let me find a place for this ear. Now you might be tempted to put the ear down here, but it's actually up fairly high, and that's because the head is tilted down. So when the head's tilted down, it kind of pivots where the ear is, right? So like if you, this is going to sound funny, but if you put your finger in your ear and look up and down, your head moves, but your ear doesn't, right? So the ear is going to be up fairly high. How many of you have your finger in your ear right now? I can just visualize it. Okay, Kathy, where are you? Kathy Edom has a good question. Let me just scroll back here. I want to make sure I got it. Do I continue to use the water with gum arabic while painting or discard after wetting your paints? There's no harm in keeping it. As long as your water bucket is clean, I would keep it. It's not doing anything wrong, so I would just keep it. No problem. Am I omitting the little boy's left arm? No, I am not. I will put his other arm in there. His little arm is coming out here. And again, I'm using kind of the box method for the hand, not really drawing the whole hand here. And if you're looking for this reference picture, by the way, it is linked underneath this video. So if you want to have your own crack at this one afterwards, you are welcome to do so. So he's got 2 visible feet here. So one set back a little bit, the other one's in front. And now this little guy over here on the right. My drawing is pretty light on this one, so I don't have to work as hard to sort of refine it. And I've mentioned this many times before, but if you're looking for angles of things, like the angle of the arm, I think of the elbow as the middle of a clock. Okay, so this arm is angling up towards 10 o'clock, for example. The way her spine was, oh, it's a little after 12. It's between 12 and 1 o'clock, that sort of thing. So as I'm looking at angles, these are some of the thoughts that go through my head. This is not a hard pencil. It's just a regular pencil. I think it's HB. Angela, if you're there, you can maybe let us know. I think it's an HB anyway, but it's fairly soft. It will be fairly smudgy on a piece of watercolor paper because of the bumpiness and my hand moving over the paper and that sort of thing. But now I'm erasing some of the working lines, the straight lines that I put down at the beginning, that sort of thing. I guess that one's okay because that's where his hairline is anyway. I think this little guy's head is looking a little small. I think I'm going to enlarge his head a bit. Sorry if I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but as I see something, I want to sort of grab it before I forget to do it. The indent comes right about where the ear is. I did move him in a little bit closer, I think, mainly because of the placement on my page, I guess. I could have put him off a little bit more, but that's where he's going to stay for today's demo, because you don't want to watch me redraw it all. So I'm looking for all these pants that he's eventually going to grow into, because they're all kind of big and crumpled. The other leg. And so this is the part where, you know, I can start sort of refining creases and making all my final adjustments. It's easy to get sort of like eager to get the paints out and start painting and all of that sort of thing. But boy, oh boy, if you're wrong on your drawing, then all the paint in the world's really not going to fix that. All right, so we have the beach. Let me just sketch in where the beach is going to go here, where the edge of the water is. Something like that. And this isn't a shore. This is the lighting at this time of day was like we were starting to get sort of a golden glow on the water. It was kind of neat, actually, but all right, I think I'm going to take my brushes out and start some drawing. But just before I do that, there is one thing I am going to do. I'm going to make sure everything I want erased, I want to erase it, because all of those lines that I don't want are going to show up in my drawing. So I'm using a kneaded eraser here, but first I'm going to erase some of the basic lines, the structure lines, if you will, with my nylon eraser, or Mars plastic, it says. But if I want to lighten this before I paint it, a kneaded eraser, you've all seen these, you know, where you stretch them out and they're like silly putty kind of thing. Let me just roll it on my paper, or on my table first. Oops, sorry. That was very Canadian of me, apologizing to my inanimate object. So I'm going to roll this over. And what this is going to do is it's going to pick up any of the sort of loosened graphite so that it doesn't start blending into my watercolors. You know, it's very easy for the watercolor to dissolve the graphite. And when that happens, you will end up with muddier watercolor, because the paint will dissolve the water, or dissolve the pencil. Okay, so just to keep things simple, I'm going to use just a couple of paper towels, and let me find one brush that I'll use. How about a number 8 synthetic round brush? This is this is from you can't get this one anymore. And it doesn't matter. It's just, you just need a regular synthetic round brush. This one's white nylon bristle. Okay, do I want to change anything in this? Do I want to change up any colors? Let's do that, just so I can show it to you. But I'm going to work on the children first. This little guy on the left, I would say this is ultramarine blue here. I usually use cobalt, but for some reason I put ultramarine in this, and that's what I'm going with. This one's French ultramarine, I believe. And I'm going to start my painting with wet color on dry paper. And it's very important, if you want to have any of your washes look smooth, fill up your brush. Make a wet enough puddle, because when you paint on dry paper, the paper just sucks up that paint like crazy. So I'm going to do a light wash. I'm not going to worry about any of the creases or anything like that right now. I'm just going to do a light wash on this little guy. I'm going to put some of the creases and wrinkles in the shirt and that sort of thing. But it's an easy way to get started, right? Just paint by number, basically. Okay, one shirt done. That's pretty straightforward. I think I wouldn't mind her shorts being a similar color, but I want to change it up a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of cerulean blue in it. And I'll do her shorts a similar blue, maybe a little more cerulean. Not a lot of difference there, but some. Okay, there's a slight difference, probably more noticeable in person than it is on camera. Now there's a couple of blue jeans going on here, so let's take my palette. I'm going to take this blue, maybe a little more ultramarine. I'm going to add some, there's all kinds of ways you could go about creating these colors, but I'm going to take some burnt sienna and mix that in. It's instantly going to dull the color to more of a blue jean color. A little more red, or a little more blue, I mean. And I'm trying to make this maybe less runny, because I know that the pants are darker than the shirt. Is that dry enough? Hope so. So I will come in with this darker blue. And again, I'm not overly worried about the, all the little nuances and things like that. It's just something that I can come back to and add more values. If I'm painting, it's got a little blue cuff here where it's rolled up, so let's leave a little bit at the bottom of the pant leg for that. But all of those highlights and details are going to come in afterwards. And I'm doing it that way because this gives me a middle value, something where I can sort of build on it, right? So for the pants, you might think, well, no, it's not middle value, it's light. But for the pants, that's the middle value. It's not the lightest, it's not the darkest, it's the one in the middle. So this little guy has blue jeans as well, a little bit more blue maybe. And I'm going to come across and just paint that in. Ins and outs of all the wrinkles. I want that. There is his feet are apart. We're looking from behind, so we do see water and everything between the legs. Making little adjustments as I go along. I'm okay with not following my line to a T. You know, if I feel like once the paint's going down, something needs to be altered, I'll do it. It's fine. Filling up my brush again because I really don't want a bunch of brush marks in here. This is my first wash. So I'm trying to avoid brush marks. You need to load up your brush enough. Whenever you work on dry paper. The time when you don't put a lot in your brush is when you're working on wet paper, because you don't want it to go completely out of control. All right. Now I'm thinking maybe I'm trying to think of a color. Maybe I'll ask you guys, what color would you make her shirt if you were changing it up? Meanwhile, I'm going to put a dark in on this little guy's shirt. And it's boy, I'm going to have to use some Payne's Gray, I think, to make this extra dark. Okay, Virginia, have a good week. All right, so as I paint this little guy, I have to be really aware of her arm. Can't paint through it. That would be a little bit of a disaster. These kids have conflicting clothing because they have long sleeves, long pants, short sleeves, everything in between. I didn't quite get those two overlapped, but I think I'm okay. Now I understand that there's creases and all of that kind of thing on these children's clothing. I will come to that. I am doing the wiggles on the pant legs and that sort of thing in the meantime, but did have a little bit of bleeding right here where it came back up, but the better solution is just to leave it alone, not fiddle with it too much. Sort of. I'm trying to watch the chat as well. Would have been possible to paint the background first. I could have, yes, I could have done that. I'm going to, but since the children are my focal point, I really wanted to get to that first. In the last examples that I did, I also did the children first. I'm not sure if I want to do the whole thing. If I were actually outdoors painting this, I would probably want to get the figures in because that's the most important thing. And then leave the second important thing, like the least important thing or the lesser important thing, for afterwards, especially if it's sort of a blank canvas the way this background is. So that's kind of why I'm leaving it, but there's no right or wrong answer to that. You could, yes, the short answer is yes, you could do that first. If I made this kind of a, I don't know what kind of color that would be. It's kind of a greenish gold. And I took that through her legs. Her legs would have a different color to it. So it would affect lighter areas. It would affect blues that I'm putting down, you know. So if you do a whole background right through, the colors you put on top are affected by those colors underneath because what you're putting on is transparent color. It will shift your color. It might even dull your color. Do I want to keep this a monochromatic painting? I'm actually asking if, well, I wanted to actually just to suggest a different, like how to change something. If I felt, oh, this is nice, but it's all too blue, but yellow is a nice complement. Yeah, so that yellow was actually one of the suggestions. Bright pink. I thought about bright pink too. That would also look quite nice. Yellow and blue are really a nice combination. Or pink and blue. So how about if I go with a yellow, and maybe I'll do yellow just because I can explain this a little bit better. If I go with a yellow, I'm not going to go with a very bright yellow. I'm not going to go with this one. And the reason being is that they're not in bright sunshine. If they were in bright sunshine, this might be my go-to color. But since they are not, I'm going to use a duller yellow. So maybe a raw sienna. I could pick up maybe a little gamboge as well, but mainly it's going to be raw sienna. So I'm going to take and do raw sienna on her shirt. I actually could go right through her hair, which maybe I'll do because it will allow me to just paint more directly, and any of the little gaps in the hair, the color will show through. But there's one thing I have to do, and that is I want to soften an edge. So this edge here, I don't want that showing through her hair, so I'm going to soften right there. Hard lines, even if you're putting something dark over top, hard lines will end up showing. I could have erased this a little better. There's actually going to be a pencil line in her shirt, and that's one downside to yellows, is they always show the pencil lines. Okay, but I've got a basic yellow down there. Okay, so now we're going to start to think about hair and that sort of thing. So I'm going to start with the same raw sienna as my base. The opposite of yellow is purple. So if I want to dull this to a browner color, I mean, I could add burnt sienna, but if I add purple, you'll see it kind of dulls down that yellow. This is going to be a sort of give me a more of a blonde version, perhaps, of this little guy on the left. I still think it's way too bright. I'm going to steal over here and dull things down a little more. I'm feeling like that's a little better. So I'm going to take and put this hair in here. Might have gone a little dark there, so I'll just pull a little off. Now I'm giving you colors that are generally what we see here. I could go completely independent with my colors. I could make these children green and purple and orange and all of these various colors to make a different style of painting, but I'm going with how to replicate what we actually see. So I love paintings like Graham Barry, for example, where he uses loads of color. Pam Wanger, she also uses lots of wonderful colors in her skin tones and things like that. That's, look those people up for that technique, but I'm going to go with something a little bit more like what I'm actually seeing. So just to clarify that I'm not against using different colors. I do appreciate that sort of thinking and that approach to watercolor. Okay, so for the skin tones, I'm gonna go with some raw sienna, and I'm going to add some permanent rose to it. Now that raw sienna got a little messed up with other colors, like it had some of this blue in it and that sort of thing. I'm not really panicking about that at all. I think it just kind of makes it feel a little bit more natural. I don't want actual pure, bright, clean colors when they are in shadow. I need a little bit more of a muted version. So let's go a little more pink here. If in doubt, I really do recommend that you take a scrap of paper. Don't have much here, but I can test out a color and see, oh, does it need a little shifting one way or another? Remember too that when you're mixing up a puddle, and then you have a wet brush, it's always going to come out a little different when you actually paint it on something, when you see it in the puddle. So that's another good reason for just test out your paint on a little scrap. All right, so again, I'm really just focusing on the washes right now, not all the detail. This hand is going to get a lot darker, but I can start off with something really light. It's got a really weird, probably something in the hand, but the hand's really, I can't figure out quite how this hand is. I'll just try to replicate it somewhat. The arm here. So you'll notice what I'm doing is I'm not finishing anything just yet. I'm really just concentrating on the overall middle value everywhere. That whole middle value is the key to getting the shading right, getting the form right. You've got to start somewhere. Now, if this person, you know, if you're drawing a person and the sun is out, there's a very good chance that you're going to have kind of a bright highlight around some of these like some of these limbs, and usually on the top of the head, because that's where the sun is strongest. And so you would leave that. But this is a lot more subtle that's in this particular instance. It's a lot more subtle because of it being, you know, late in the day and they're not in the sun. Okay, so I'm coming back to my palette here. I'm going to take a little bit of that brighter blue for the cuff. And sometimes I just smush together all the colors to make a new one. So that might be good for these denim type shoes on the right hand side here. And then we have really dark shoes on the little guy on the left. Just in case that's not dry. I wouldn't have the advantage of this dryer if I were sitting at the beach. But most people aren't doing live stream at the beach anyway. Most people. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Amelia's saying, I have such difficulty painting children's facing forward. Always looks like a cartoon. Love this children's series you're doing. Yeah, part of the reason I'm doing them from behind is to put the focus on the actual figure, like not the face, but the figure. And the other reason is I don't want them to be distracted by me pointing a camera when I'm taking my reference picture. So that's something I keep in mind as well. I'm not going to get too crazy fussy with all of these details. It's when I'm in my sketchbook, I give myself a little bit of permission to loosen up a little. I don't have to be too worried about all these things all the time. You may have seen the painting that I just posted recently. Well, I spent hours and hours and hours working on that. And before anybody asks, no, it's not going to be a demo. I actually spent days working on it. And so that's not going to happen. But when I'm in my sketchbook, it's a one and done. Like, you know, I get the essence in there. One thing about sketching, one thing that's really going to improve your drawing skills, your drawing skills, but also your painting skills, is to just get the immediate information down. Like, what's important. It helps your brain prioritize, you know, the most important elements in your painting. So I'm going to get some of this dark hair on there. So for that, I'm going to use some Payne's Gray, some burnt sienna, because it's not this blue gray. You can maybe see how bluish it is. If I add brown to it, I get a very dark brown, which is what I'm after. So When I don't pre-wet this, it does take a little bit more work to get the paint built up to a darker value. But I'm going to come in and just paint these darks on her hair. I'm not going to paint all the little strands at this point. I'm just going to maybe suggest a few little gaps in the hair. So now you see the advantage of my painting that color underneath. So it allows me to do this hair and not have to come back in and try to touch up in between all of those. I'm going to rinse my brush just so it's a little lighter on this side, and a little bit lighter, diluted color. That wasn't very diluted, was it? But I can always lift color out where I need it a little lighter. There, each side of her head, for example. This little guy might have a little bit more streakiness to the hair. I can basically see the crown of the head. So I want to try to follow that with some of this some of my strokes in here. So I'm going a little bit lighter than what I did on her because I want to come in and add some darks on top. Almost a little bit bluish on the top, and I guess that's from the sky. A little bluish on top of the head. It seems like a strange thing to put in there, but often the sky color does affect whatever you're painting outdoors. You ever paint a black dog? You'll really see that a lot of the highlights look blue. They don't look gray, they look blue like the sky. So it can really make a difference when you're painting dark things in the sun. I wonder, how do I document my reference for each painting? Document my reference. I'm not sure what you mean by document like I do take progress photos of the painting process, if that's what you mean. I usually do that on my phone, but then when I finish my painting, I'll take a picture with my 35mm camera. I actually should be doing all my pictures on my 35mm camera, but I'm basically a lazy painter. What can I say? Just reading, sorry. Peach would have been nice too, yeah. Okay, thank you. All right, so a couple of things I'm going to adjust. You remember I said that I didn't quite get this part of her pants quite right. It looks like it needs to stick out a little more. I'm going to see if I can sort of duplicate that color. That was cerulean blue and ultramarine mixed together. And I'm going to zoom in for this because people think I don't make mistakes. I make mistakes constantly. But I've found ways to work around it. So this might help you sometime in one of your paintings. It doesn't have to be children, but this might help you. I'm going to zoom right in. Will it come into focus? There we go. All right, so if I want to add more here, I'm not going to paint over everything and then try to include that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to only paint this little sliver here. My color match might not be perfect. I might overlap a little bit of what I did previously. So it may not be a perfect match. You can tell it's not a perfect match. I kind of did that on purpose, just to show you that this isn't something to panic over. All right, so if I were to take this and dry it, now as it happens, she has kind of a stripe on those pant legs, so it's right about where this is. So I'm not too worried, but might even fix this little sliver down here as well. Okay, so I've filled it in and I've overlapped some of the line a little bit here. Some of that might be pencil line as well. But if I wanted to even this out, let's say that's not a pencil line and I just want to even this out, I just let it all dry and then I can re-wet everything and that will just sort of smoosh together and it'll look like there was no repair there at all. Don't brush it around too much, that's dangerous. But it doesn't look like I did anything wrong there, right? So it was a way of hiding my mistake. I don't have cobalt blue on my palette. It is, yeah, for whatever reason. I think I chose the ultramarine because it was a further, like the difference between the colors was greater. And so I wanted to have the option of the range. So I went with the blue on there. I may have had more blue at the time and maybe didn't have enough cobalt to fill up my palette. I don't even remember the reason. But the ultramarine blue is a little bit warmer than the cerulean blue. So it leans a little bit more to a purple. And this one leans a little bit more to a green. So I just wanted to have two different blues on there. You could do fine with cobalt. I know I use cobalt most of the time, but ultramarine in a sketchbook, sometimes ultramarine can be granulating, but this one's not too bad. This I don't know if this one's Winsor Newton. This one might be Winsor Newton. I can't remember. I have a chart for this somewhere, but I don't remember. But anyway, I wanted to show you that little fix because that could be helpful to you one day when you have a sliver. So the thing is, if you try to repaint and include that, this will be twice as dark as the sliver that you added on. So that's why it doesn't work as well as just putting in a similar value here, drying it so that, everything's the same consistency. Then just, you can wet it and blend it all together. Sometimes you get really lucky and you put it on, you don't have to do anything to it. But in this case, I smushed it together to show you that. All right, so let me zoom out again and we'll keep going. So I've got a little bit of blue to put on this little guy's pull-ups or diapers. And I'm going to go with cerulean on this one. But I do need to leave some white paper. It's pretty much just the little stretchy part of the top that we need to get in here. So the little puckers there. I'm sure that there's a design on these diapers. Never had such a thing when my kids were little, but, you know, I'm not going to worry about all of the little design on there. There's probably just enough there that I can get away with it. Just going to blend that so it's not stark white. I don't want really stark white. All of it, if I have the pants are dark and that's too white, it's going to draw all the attention to that spot. And let's not draw attention to a diaper. Okay, so it's in there. It's more toned down, I guess, than what the reference is. Trying not to leave too much white paper. But now I have a middle value everywhere, except for the background. Okay, we haven't done the background yet. I do have a little something here on the heel. I just noticed I do have something here that I need to, it's like a little orange logo or something. So I'll take an orange-like color. I'll put a dot and a dot for the logo. When that's dry, I'll be able to put a lighter blue around it, and then I've got all the white paper covered for these little guys. I'm just using a dryer to speed things up. If I was on the beach, the sun would do a better job than the dryer, probably. You do have to work fast when you're working at a beach. So diluted color here because I want a light blue. Good enough. Okay. If my bus was leaving, I've used that analogy before. It's not just an analogy. It's it's actually happened to me. Definitely happened to me in Ireland. But you know, when your time is limited, you want to stay to paint, but you've got to run to a doctor's appointment or something. You can't finish it. If you have this much done, you've got enough information to keep going. You can always snap a reference picture as well. I do that all the time. But we have a middle value everywhere. So now the next step is going to be to add in some of the darks. And the darks are going to start to create the forms. You know, the creases in the clothing and that sort of thing. They're going to explain where the knee is bending or the elbow is bending or where there's a gap under a sleeve or things of that nature. So this may look kind of cartoonish at this stage. Somebody said, where's the ugly stage on my paintings? Well, this is it. You know, I consider this, you know, this doesn't look like a finished painting. Doesn't look much like anything. But what I have the opportunity to do right now is I have the opportunity to erase any of the excess pencil lines. So I'm going to do that because this is the best time when everything's dry and before I start another stage. So I'm going to erase all of this excess stuff. That one at the waist, remember I painted over it, can't erase it. That one is in there for good. I can't even count how many times somebody in one of my classes had said, yeah, but how do I get rid of the lines after it's all been painted? And I don't know a solution to that one. I wish I did, but once the graphite is dissolved in the paint, it settles into the fibers of the paper, and then it's there. It's part of the process. So all the unwanted stuff comes off, and it's a little cleaner now for continuing. making a mess all over myself here, but here we go. So now I'm still using this same brush. I could move down to a smaller brush at this stage. There's no harm in doing that because, obviously these spaces are going to start getting a little bit more, a little bit smaller. But I won't go to a tiny brush because this one's a same brand. It is a 6. You can't get these anymore because the store closed. It's the store brand. But anyway, I am going to come in and start finding where the wrinkles go. And so if I just took the same color and added it on, this guy was pretty much pure cobalt blue, I believe. Or sorry, I'm saying cobalt, I meant ultramarine blue. I think it was mostly ultramarine. So if I just took the same color and added it on, it's twice as dark because it's transparent color. I'm not painting it on white paper, I'm painting it on painted paper. Okay, I see a couple of questions. I like, do you not write down? Oh, okay, so that was the explanation. Do I write down where I got the reference, Pixabay, or your own reference? Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, actually, when I take a picture, I have the location on, and so I actually do, like, I remember where this was taken. This was taken in Florida, and I also have the location, so it'll say X beach in Florida and the date. And so I don't always, I have the GPS enabled or whatever for my photos when I'm on vacation or when I'm out taking my pictures. It tells me exactly where I've been. So I don't really have to document too much. If I use an AI image, or if I'm using something from Pixabay or something like that, I'll generally delete it after I've used it. I don't want to keep it anymore. I don't want it to get accidentally used for something else. So that's, I don't really document it so much as like write it down in a notebook or anything like that. Although when I go away on holidays, I actually do usually keep kind of like a holiday diary kind of thing, but that doesn't necessarily correlate the reference picture to my diary, but the GPS on my phone will usually do that. I don't have that feature on my 35 millimeter. Again, this is just the same color, but it's going to look darker because it is painted on blue rather than being painted on white paper. Oh, he's got a little design on his shirt. I just noticed. It's not going to be important because it's turned sideways. Could put it on, but it's a yellow design, so I can't really do it at this stage. So I blotted my brush and I'm blending that. But I didn't put I didn't add Payne's Gray to anything for a light colored shirt. I don't want to make the shadows too much contrast. I want them to look still fairly bright. But I'm paying attention now to things like gradations. So the under part of the sleeve here is going to be a little darker than the top part because, well, it's facing the ground, not the sky. So this is a number 6 synthetic round. But you can see I can do some really kind of skinny lines with it because I'm just painting with the tip. I think if you have every brush under the sun, you don't necessarily gain the right, the ability, shall we say, to control your brush in the same way. So what I mean by that is whether you use the side of the brush or whether you're using the tip of the brush, or if you're slightly angling the brush, that sort of thing. If you're using a big brush, you do become a little more aware of, how much pressure you're putting on the brush, or whether your paint's really wet and that sort of thing. You just become more aware of it. So I might take some of these lines and kind of soften them as well. For example, this little fold here is too harsh. So I'm just going to take a damp blotted brush and smooth out some of the line. All right, so we have something of the wrinkles in the clothing going on here. All right, so there's 2 values, but what about 3 values? What if I want something a little lighter? So I'm generally using colors that don't stain. Right, so I haven't got any colors on here that stain, aside from maybe the Payne's Gray. But I don't usually need to lift Payne's Gray too much. But let's say I want a little bit more light on the sleeve here. So I've got a clean paper towel, cleanish paper towel, and I'm blotting my brush. And I'm going to go along the edge of the arm here and just dampen that spot. And I can lift a bit of color. I can do the same in some of these creases. So I'm being careful not to go into my dark areas there. I'm kind of going in between or near the edge of it. If I want this arm, if this arm isn't looking like round enough, like if it looks kind of flat, probably the answer is I need to have a little more, maybe a second mid value. So some wet color here. Rinse and blot, and I'm going to soften that. So whenever you have something that's rounded, you need to have the softening to make it look rounded. So a hard edge is always going to imply an angle. All right, so now now that we've kind of got the first shirt out of the way, we can probably step up the pace a little bit here. I'm going to take and go with my darker blue for the jeans, and I'm just going to apply some of the I think this is a pocket here, but there's some darks. Can't even tell exactly what they are, but I think it's a belt. And it's really just kind of a bunch of abstract shapes that are defining the puckers, the creases, and all of that kind of thing. Yeah, so we only see that one pant leg. I would be able to tell a lot more detail if I were to see this in person. I'm going by what my phone saw and then what my printer printed, so something gets lost in the translation. It's like if you tell somebody a story and then they tell some other people, and by the time it comes around back to you, the story's all different. you know, people put their own embellishment on it. Well, each device will kind of do the same thing, right? It's going to take its own interpretation of the scene, and that's what it'll present to you. So not everything's going to be exactly right. So I'm going to focus on clothing. I'm going to get all the wrinkly clothing going on here, and then I will come back and we'll talk about the skin tones and the hair. So I'm going to move on to her shirt. Now, I need to clear off some space here because my palette's mostly got these dark colors, and I want to go to something light. So I want to keep things clean on my palette so that, you know, I don't end up with muddy, horrible colors. Oh, I just broke my palette. Ah, oh no. Well, what I'll do, the little piece of plastic broke. So I'll just crazy glue that on later. I can just take it off and save that part. I pressed a little too hard when I was cleaning that off. Okay, so I'm going to take and use the same sort of, and now I dulled down this yellow a bit with, here, let me do this here where it's cleaner, with some purple, right? So that could be a good shadow color for my yellow. I don't want to do anything like a Payne's gray. Payne's gray will make it green because Payne's gray has a lot of blue in it, and it will make it turn green. But I need a little shadow right there. There's a crease on her sleeve. Some creases at the waistline. I'm going to rinse and blot my brush, and I need to take a much paler version here, and I'm going to put some softer shadows in here. So diluted the color, and I can put in gentler folds. On lighter colors, you will have to be a little gentler in some places with your creases. And I have a little sliver over here. I don't know why I've got that left behind there, but I'm going to do the same sort of correction that I did before. I'm going to just paint in the sliver. Try not to go outside that little sliver as much as possible. So I'm just going to paint that in as close a match to what I have as possible. And so I'm just going to, if I see any hard edges that I don't want, I'm just going to quickly blot my brush, blot my brush, and take care of those before they really set up as a hard line, so I can get my softer edges there. All right, so we're going to continue on with the pants. You can almost see my palette there. So the pants, I had a lot of cerulean blue in the pants here. Some of those shadows are pretty dark. I can add just a little tiny bit of Payne's gray, I think, to these shorts. and right around the waist, because right now it kind of looks like the shorts are on top of the shirt, but I want the shirt to look like it's protruding from the waistband of the pants. So I'm going to take a little bit of this darker color right here, rinse my brush and blot, and soften this edge at the bottom. I could have wet the area first and then just added some more along here. That would be another alternative. But this gives me that shirt over top of the pants. I feel like this has to come up a little bit right here. The waistband of her pants needed to come up a little bit. There was a funny little gap there. All right, so this little guy. So this little guy, he's really dressed in dark clothing. So we're going to go mostly Payne's gray here. Coming under the elbow. Remember, I'm creating the shape from her with these darks that are surrounding. I'm really looking where these extra darks. You might have thought, well, you can't go darker than what I already had, but if you put another layer on, you can. Okay, and this sleeve is quite dark. All right, so you really see the form there. I might want to soften some edges, so I'll blot my brush, rinsed it, blotted, and I can gently come in and move a bit of paint so that it'll soften up. But overall, you can now see that that dark shirt has, you can tell that it's dark and you can tell that it has the wrinkles. And boy, if we ever set up some really strong contrast here by changing her shirt to a yellow. I mean, it was already quite a bit of contrast, but with the yellow, it's definitely there. So now I'm going to blue it up a little bit again for the pants. And there's an elasticized waistband here. So I'm going to use the tip of my brush. Got a horrible glare going on, at least from my angle. There's a glare, so it's a little hard to see what I'm doing, but you get the idea. The little elasticized waistband, there's a little pocket here. There's the legs are rounded, so we need to create a lot of the shading between the legs if the legs become rounded. They look very flat right now. A lot of people are asking me, how did I learn to paint the way I paint? Well, my number one answer is I paint a lot. I mean, a lot. If you're an occasional painter and you're only painting, every Wednesday when you get together with your friends in the afternoon or something like that, or maybe with me, then that's probably not enough painting throughout the week for those lessons to really for you to get a real good grasp of all of the lesson. Putting it into practice is absolutely the best way to learn. You'll learn from your mistakes. Not that you'll make any. I'm sure you will, but you know, that's the best way of learning is from your own mistakes. Sorry, I wish there was like a real good answer for that, but doing is the best thing. All right, I'm going to do a little bit more with her hair. Now her hair was Payne's gray, burnt sienna, and I just feel like I didn't quite bring this down far enough here. Am I back? Let me know if I'm back. It's really hard for me to tell now if I'm actually live or if I'm if I'm not. I'm okay. I think I'm back because it's showing on my phone. All right, so let me just close off my phone here so I don't get an echo or something. And I will get back to my demo. So there we go. Let me zoom in a little bit more. I had to kind of reset absolutely everything. Oops, I'm still hearing the echo of my phone here. Let me just stop that. Okay, thank you for waiting. Right in the middle of my live stream. How inconvenient. How rude. Right. Now, where did we leave off? So I was adding the pants here, and I'm going to move on to the skin tones. So I'm going to go with my raw sienna, my permanent rose. Now, I could also just use a little burnt sienna. It's kind of brownish. That would work quite nicely as well. But I do think it needs a little bit more red in it. Okay. So for this, I'm going to actually dampen the lake first because I want to put it on the right-hand side and just let that create the natural form of the lake. Actually, it looks a little too bright. I'm going to mix a little blue into that. It looks a little too orange to me. That's a little better. So a little bit of blue added just tones that right down, makes it a little bit darker. Going to dampen the other lake. Oop, my brush wasn't completely clean. And I'm going to come in with this, with the darker color on the right side again. All right, so I'm going to take some more of this sort of darkened version here, and I'm going to get a little darkness on her arm. And, you know, because the arm is smaller, I'm not going to wet it first. I'm just going to put the color on, and quick before it dries, I will soften the edge. So two ways. You can, if it's a larger area, dampen it, put the color where you want it, and that will give you that sort of smooth shading. If if it's a small area, just put it on dry, because if you wet the area first, it'll just carry on across, like you don't have as much control, so it'll carry across too far, and then you'll have shadows where you don't want them. Oh, good. The whole chat is still here. That's good. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to sort of look back on that, but when you paint large scale like the lace and teapot, do I paint it in view or a photo of it, or both? Actually, it is my teapot. It is my lace. I did take the photo myself, but I do, because it's so detailed and it's so highly realistic, I am working from a photo. The lighting won't change, the angle won't change or anything like that. And it, basically took me a week of pretty steady painting to get that one done. So, hang on a second here. I'm just making sure. Please check. Oh, I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. I'm here. I'm still here. I was just reading the chat. I'm sorry. So, all right. I'm going to carry on here. So this little guy on the left side, I realized something I've done kind of wrong here. I need to remove a little bit. I've given him a really fat neck. So I'm going to take and see if I can lift a little bit of this right here. It's just a damp brush, blot. So I'm trying to lift up a little bit of what I put down there. I'm not going to take out magic eraser and all that nonsense for such a little thing, but that's definitely better, proportional to his larger head. It did need to be a little bit of a narrower neck. So I'm taking more of that shadow skin tone color that I was using before, and that is pretty much going to go all over this face area. The right side of the neck. And it looks like he's quite dark, but yes, it is in shadow, so therefore it is quite dark. There's quite a strong shadow right sort of where the neck and the chin meet. So I'm putting a little bit of extra color there, darker bluish color. A little bit up in the ear. And yeah, that's probably all that needs. Now this hand was also quite dark, so I'm going to take and use some fairly dark color here. Not sure what's going on with these fingers. It looks a little strange, but somebody's going to look at this and go, wait a minute, that hand doesn't look right. So, if there's something really strange like that, feel free to change it to something that looks proper. You don't have to, if something, if somebody's contorting in a weird way, unless you actually want to capture that, you don't have to be stuck with it. So, for example, I might just even out his fingers and just make the hand look like it's like that. Okay, then problem solved. Nobody's going to say, oh, that's weird. I could even maybe I will have that overlapping the pant. Maybe like it looks like he's showing her something. She's looking down, so that's a high probability. So not that much shading on this hand, but just where from the knuckles down, mostly, and maybe a little bit under the sleeve. Right, so we're creating form. There's a little bit of an angle right here. This is in shadow. The face is in shadow, but the ear's still a little bit exposed, so it still stays a little bit lighter. Since the color of the paint will lighten, should I make the skin darker? If I decide that it should actually be darker, I will usually do a second layer. I don't want to jump in and then find out, oh, I was wrong. So I will sometimes do a second layer if it's needed. I try to do it right on the first go, and working on dry makes that easier, by the way. If you were working on dry paper, the values tend to be a little closer. So I'm going to carry on here. I don't want our I don't want the power to go out again. And sometimes that happens. We'll have a day when the power's just not that reliable. I don't know why. Maybe there is a storm nearby. Doesn't look like it, but could be. There's a lot of sort of pockets of storms these days, so it's hard to say. So I'm just looking for some of the darker areas on the hair, and just, with a few little lines, I'm helping to create the hair texture and the shadow at the same time, but I'm not painting individual hairs. That's just craziness, right? Like, who wants to do that? So I'm painting areas where the hair looks a little darker. The crown here. And the top of the head's a little bit lighter. So I think that's probably all I need to do there. And I wanted to put a little bit more dark on this little guy's hair. So that's more Payne's Gray. I'll get into that. He looks like he's looking up. So his crown is right about here, not the top of his head, but here, because his head's tilted back. So, but I wanted to get the streakiness of his hair. So this is where I'm able to get a little bit of the hair highlights. I don't know if these highlights are natural, but since this is a toddler, I'm going to guess that they are. But I'm following the contour of what I'm seeing. Everything's sort of spiraling around this crown on his head. Okay, so there we go. Generally speaking, I'm pretty close to being done here. I do feel like her shirt could use a little bit more, but at least a little softening here. I can soften that a little bit with a blotted brush. But I think I want to talk about the background a little bit now. If I need to make any further adjustments, I mean, sometimes afterwards I'll see things and I'll say, oh yeah, ear could be a little bit more pink or something like that. I'll come in and I'll do little minuscule little add-ons, but I don't think you need to see like too much emphasis on that. I do feel like her pants look a little shapeless so far, so I do need to put a little bit more on there, and then I'm just going to talk about the background. So one of the reasons I feel like her pants look a bit shapeless is because I don't have the roundness or all of the wrinkles in the pant area, in this crotch area, so that's got to come down. There's a little bit over here as well. And you can see it doesn't always have to be a dark color. It can be something a little bit softer. There's, she also has the elasticized pants. So there's that sort of band there. And then there's some consequently there's some puckers, like some wrinkles in the fabric. So I'll soften some of those. I could even just dampen the area and add some of those in. So her pants are starting to feel like they have a little bit more shape to them. So be careful of that. When things look like they need another layer, it's usually because you need 3 values. You need a light, a medium, a dark, but you can have lots of mediums. Like you could have a little bit darker and a little bit, a little bit of a light medium, and then you could have a darker medium before the actual darks. So I might even come in on this little guy and, whoop, maybe too dark. But I could add a few sort of subtle shades in here. Not as dark as the first ones I put in, that sort of thing. And, it just starts to be a little bit more believable when you put the extra value in there. All right, so beach. Now, it's late in the day. This beach looks blue. That's a little bit weird. But I'm going to make it not dissimilar from that. So I'm going to start with my beach color, right? So this is raw sienna. And I've got some blues over here. So let's mix those in. And it ends up being kind of a dark color. Now it's definitely more greenish than I want. So I'm going to add more blue, just clean blue. Thing is, I just don't want it too bright of a blue. And it needs to have that little bit of a sand element to it, so that raw sienna. So it's kind of looking gray. I don't know how this is going to look, but I know that it really wasn't quite as blue as that. That could be just a consequence of my printer, but I am going to go a little bit more blue anyway. I'm going with that. Okay. So I will just paint around the feet. I'm leaving the white for the soles. This guy looks like he's got brand new shoes on. I'm painting on dry paper. It's a pretty big area, which means I better make sure that I have painted, like I've mixed enough color over here. Looks a bit like, it looks a little bit like concrete. Oh well. Oh, this guy has white on his shoes too. And you see how I'm fading this out? I mean, I'm basically scrubbing whatever's left on my brush on the paper, so it gives that sort of broken edge. Ah, I forgot the white. I'm just drying that spot so I can paint under that. Won't be perfect, but it'll be okay. Now it looks to be a little bit darker at the water's edge. More shadow there for some reason. I'll just add a little extra color right in there. There we go. And I better dry this because I need to keep moving along here. Wait a minute, I'm going to blend that a little bit better. Where it forms a hard edge, I don't want to do that, so. I got my main focus done, the children. This guy's shoes are a little light. I think I'm going to have to adjust that. My paper's curling as I use the heat on it. I could clamp it. I do have clamps, but I won't bother getting them right now. I'll just hold it. I'm going to darken up this guy's shoes. There we go. And now I'm going to talk about the water. The water is, like I said, this really strange kind of gold color. And then it's going to get blue in the background, so I'm going to mix up some of my blue. I need to have enough color. So important. I'll go to my bigger brush. As I'm painting, if I find that I am, not quite getting up to the edges, I'll quickly use a small brush to help bring that in. But I'm going to start along the bottom. Oh, that's really too golden, isn't it? Let's put some cerulean in that. That'll be better. So I'm not going to see the little gap there. As long as I'm using some wet color, I'm going to just carry on. And this color, as long as that's still wet, I can take my smaller brush and bring it up. And sort that out. Keep going. Now the most important thing here for me is to work all of this at the same time and keep this part wet. So if that top edge stays wet, I'll be able to continue. If that edge dries, I'm going to have a hard line that I'm not going to like. So, and I need to have this color match the other side. Like, can't suddenly change color on the other side of that little boy. So that's why it's really important to have enough paint mixed up so that you have consistency, and so you don't have to stop in the middle of a big wash just to do this. I don't have to keep the top edge of that one wet because the arm is in the way. Same here. I won't have to really worry about keeping the top edge of this wet, but just in case, I'm going to keep putting some moisture up there, some of that same color. If I left a little sliver of white around things, that wouldn't be the end of the world either. And if you have, like, there's actually a little too much paint here between her legs, so I'm going to just pull a little bit, like drink up a little bit of that, clean up the edge at the same time. Don't want that to dry, so let's just keep that wet over there. So it's like babysitting all of these 3 kids all at the same time, right? Got to keep watching that edge doesn't dry on me. Another thing you could do is you could dampen this first, but I find that a little bit of that ends up, usually my colors end up too light if I do that. I'm just trying to work as quickly as I can. If I'm at the beach, I have to work quickly anyway. All right, let's get a little more of this. I kind of switched to my small brush and not really thinking. I just kept it in my hand, but getting a bit of a blossom there, but that'll give me a chance to show you what I would do about that. Let's get a little more of this. Keep going. This is where I can correct that little funny bit I had that I had to lift on the neck. See, I can bring that in a lot more. So the poor little guy doesn't have a fat neck. Going to, now here again, I've got to watch that top edge. Didn't mix quite enough color, so I'm gonna do my best to try and get something similar. A little too dark. Get it blended in. I'll get away with it as long as I can get it blended in. I hope I'll get away with it. I don't know. I have to thin it down. I think I got a thicker puddle than I had started with. But there's a little gap in here. That too has to meet up with whatever's along this band. Now, so far it really doesn't look like water. Kind of looks a little green. Definitely looks green. But I'm going to start to transition to a blue, and I think, at least I hope, that's going to explain for the viewer more what that is. Or I might just completely mess this up. I don't know. Let's just go. I'm going to start transitioning to my blues. And thankfully, there's no children in the way to interrupt this time. So keep the brush loaded up. That's where brush marks always come in, is not loading your brush enough. Sorry, I kind of went off screen there. I was, I got pushing my pad of paper there. So I've got a couple of blossoms that I don't want. I'm going to lift a little bit while I can, but most of it I'm going to have to wait for it to dry to make my corrections, adjustments, overlapping spots that dried here. But I'll show you what I would do with this type of a thing. Oh, thank you so much, Brazen. Would I use a bit of salt in the sand to make it, I could. That's definitely something I could do. But I do feel like this value isn't quite dark enough here either with the sand. Let me try. A little bit more of a, I'm going to use cerulean blue here. No, cobalt. A little bit more blue, I think. Blue sand? You're probably thinking. Well, I needed the value a little darker. For the water to look right, for the type of lighting to look better, I need to have that water a little bit lighter. I did go a little heavy on it, so I'm going to show you what I would do just to finish this up. But the value of the sand needed to be darker than the actual water, which is a little different than usual, right? It's usually the other way around. But to speed things up, I will use my dryer. And I'm going to dry even the ugly area here. Now, I've done some things wrong here. And let me point them out, because this might be something that you're seeing in your own paintings and not really realizing what needs to be changed, what is incorrect. So I'm going to point it out in just a second. I can dampen the back of this page, by the way, and kind of flatten that out again. So I'm not really worried about it. But here's the thing that needs addressing, besides the blossom, which I'll show you. When I look here, the sand is darker than the water. You know, mine's pretty similar. So that's something I gotta adjust, right? I've gone too dark in my water. Her leg is darker than the sand. Look how light her foot is here. Well, that's an adjustment that has to be made, because now the sand is much darker than her leg. So these are all those sort of push-pull things that I have to do at the end of my painting. So I've got way too much stuff in here. So I'm going to lift a little color, and hopefully I'm going to get back to this. But what I'm doing now, I know it sounds dumb that I wet the paper, and I put down wet color and then I dried the paper before wetting it again. But where it will lift most easily is where the buildups are. So where there's excess color, like here in this blossom, for example, I can move it around. Look at this. I can move that around. Even it out. I can even pull off color, right? So if I start down here and if I want the sand, if I want this lighter, all this water here lighter, I can just use water, dilute the color, and start pulling up some of that excess paint. Now, would I fuss this much in my sketchbook normally? No, probably not. But I felt like there was just something here that I could share with you that would be kind of helpful to you when you're faced with a oh I really messed up moment. And so I'm going to just continue wetting this and lifting, redistributing any of those dark buildups. Now you do have to watch around edges because you will get dark buildups there for sure, because you're kind of trying not to get onto the hair or whatever. So your tendency is to come a little short, and then you get this sort of dark buildup. The other thing you can do, and this is always an option, is that you can darken your figures. Everything is relative in painting. You can, you've seen very high key paintings where, everything's kind of pale. Well, you can darken things in your painting to balance out values as well. So let's say you're a little heavy-handed. I mean, hopefully with time you will learn to not be so heavy-handed, but if it happens, don't feel like you've failed and you can't do anything about it. There's things you can do. You can adjust things so it just looks like a little bit more underexposed or overexposed. So getting a bit of a build up here, so I'm just revisiting this to pull a little of that extra color out of here. Like I said, I wouldn't normally do this kind of thing in my sketchbook where I'm fussing a lot, but clean paper towel, gentle blotting will lift color, so I can get things lighter that way. This one doesn't need too much lightening. I think it's okay. But again, the whole redistributing of the paint, the thing is, it's, if you're redistributing the paint, you're kind of using a delicate touch, and don't keep brushing till it starts drying again, because that's what caused the problem in the first place. This overlap here, where one edge dried, I should be able to lift most of that and get that corrected. Doesn't work instantly. Sometimes you just have to be patient enough for that paint on the paper to soften a little bit. But you can redistribute. Don't scrub at an area though. Scrubbing at an area always looks like you scrubbed at the area. And I'm still using a really delicate touch. Even when I'm blotting, I'm kind of using a light touch. So it's overall it's getting lighter. It's not that golden color. I just feel like that golden color would be a little bit too odd. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but and when you do yours, you can pick whatever coloring you want for your water, but most important, it's that value, the lighter value versus darker value that needs to be addressed at this stage of my painting anyway. So paper towel, blot gently, just gentle blotting. But I'm getting an overall lightening of everything, which is what I'm after. But down here, I do feel like that needs to be darker. So I'm going to take and recreate some of the skin tone. And I used a little burnt sienna, I think, in that. And I believe I used a little blue as well to get it a little duller. So it's kind of like a shock when you first put that down, right? It's like, oh my gosh, that's so dark. But when I blend it in, I'm hoping I will have something that will be a little bit more logical, I guess, to the forms and the comparative values. So let's blend some of this in. I think it could be a little bit more pink. Now keep in mind this is going to dry lighter as well. I know it looks shocking when you first do it. I think that's why you have to practice painting a lot, because sometimes we end up doing the right thing, but we kind of freak out because when we first do it, it's like, oh, I don't know, that's too much. And you worry, and then you undo it. And then it still doesn't look right, so you redo it. And that's why how paintings get overworked, right? Because you second guess yourself. And I'm putting a little extra dark along her legs here too. Softening. Blotted brush just helps to soften. It's feeling that's consequently it's making the water look not so dark by doing that. I feel like this little guy's hair isn't quite dark enough now. Make sure I don't want to be bleeding into the background. Maybe I just better make sure. I'm not covering up everything that I did. The original layers are still there. That's giving some texture to the hair. But I made the head darker compared to the water. The face also, if the value looks the same, it needs to have an adjustment. So when I'm doing my paintings, I'm evaluating, like making all these comparisons all the time. So this is when I'm coming in and darkening things to bring the balance back, right? A couple of wisps of hair for her. Maybe add in a couple of darks just to show some of the value changes in the hair. Show the direction of the hair, things like that. A little bit of texture there. How does lifting like this affect or be affected by the sizing and the resulting painting? Well, lifting the sizing isn't a problem if you aren't painting back into it. Now, mostly I'm just lifting in this case. I'm not replacing it with anything. So I wouldn't recommend a lot of this if you have a lot of painting to do back in there. But lifting is a good way to lighten something up. I mean, if something goes too dark, what choice do you have? You need to get some of the paint off. So yeah, there's it's not ideal. What would have been ideal is for me to do the exact, like the right value right off the bat. That would have been the best scenario. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So I'll just play around with some of these things and make all these adjustments. If there's, if the little slivers drive you crazy, you can touch them up, but I don't think it's really necessary. It's not even a bad thing to have a little sliver of white in your painting. That's what makes it look like a painting, I think. I don't love it as much as maybe the other ones that I did, but I don't hate it. I do feel like I could, continue darkening a little bit in some of these areas. The legs darker than the water. Oh, I haven't really put much on her arms by comparison, so I do need to kind of come in and darken that as well. Giving her a better tan now, that's for sure. But the water feels lighter by comparison because I'm coming in, I'm continuing to darken things. Even this little guy's blue shirt, I feel like that could be a little bit stronger. Because relative to the background, it needs to be darker than the background. This little guy's pretty good because he's already wearing darker clothing. Where it gets a little chancy is, where you have similar value here and here. purple to darken the yellow. I'll blend in some of that, and I think that's probably about all I'll do. You know what? I want to be careful not to overwork everything. I mean, kind of feel like I already have, but I don't want to go any further. Fussing and that sort of thing. Sometimes the fussing just makes things worse. I bet you figured that one out. But I'm going to blend a little bit here and just to help that feel like it's a little more rounded and that the folds are a little bit more pronounced. But there you go. Anyway, so it is what it is, and you know, maybe not. I think I probably would do things differently, and you know, I would just have another kick at the can and just try it again. There's only so much you can do to a painting before it starts looking overworked, right? So we all know that. I don't need to tell you that. And so anyway, there's our drawing. This guy maybe could be a little darker, but I'll come in and do that later. You don't need to actually see me. Darkening is pretty easy, straightforward. Let me just make sure I haven't missed any of the questions. Since this is only a sketchbook, I might use watered down white gouache. It's cheating. It's cheating? No, it's not cheating. You could. That is an option, and I would do it in a sketchbook. I wouldn't do it on a painting. But so the reference is in terms of lightening the water area. I do have white paint, and I probably could show you a little bit of that if you wanted, but let's see. I have P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White, this stuff, and I don't have my gouache with me. It's upstairs, so I'm not going to run up and get that, but if I wanted to, I could take a little bit of white paint. Oops, dripped a little bit on the reference, but reference is fine. So dilute it. Now, the one thing about adding white paint to your watercolors is they become chalkier looking, okay? They will look a little more like gouache. So and you're probably thinking, well, yeah, but now it's completely white. No, it won't be completely white when that dries. That's going to be, it'll be the color that I have, but it will be much lighter. Like it'll look like I've covered it with something. You know, when you use whiteout, you've all had whiteout, I'm sure. And whiteout is a product you put over things in your textbooks or whatever. And I'm just rinsed my brush here. Now the trick here is going to be getting it blended, like getting it to fade. That's going to be the tricky part here. And I'll show you one area, but I won't show it all to you because I know you guys want to go for your lunch. But you can see I've regained the lighter value there. Yeah, it has a chalkier, milkier look about it. But in a pinch, Sure, go for it. And I don't consider it cheating, at least not in my sketchbook. I don't consider it cheating at all. It's just that I don't like the look of it um, in my paintings. I wouldn't mind in a sketchbook. Uh, it is similar to gouache, but working carefully around the hand here. But again, you have to start fading this as you go up. Now, bleed-proof white is very opaque. It will cover most stuff, but it's still got a little bit of that sort of greenish hue in there, slightly green. At this point, this almost becomes more of a gouache painting because I'm using so much gouache, so much of opaque color. The problem is if it gets into your other paints, it can be a problem, which is why I'm using the lid. It can turn your other paints into coffee with cream rather than black coffee. But don't let anybody tell you you're cheating in watercolor or cheating in painting in general, in art. There's no such thing. I'd like to know where this law is or this rule book. Where does this exist? I mean, I'm sure it exists within certain organizations who want to be more purist and all of that sort of thing. And yeah, I wouldn't be able to take this out of my sketchbook and enter it into a professional show. But for my sketchbook, what the heck? It doesn't matter. No worries. And I've found more solutions by just making mistakes. I mean, how are you going to find a solution if you don't make a mistake, right? You have to make a mistake to find the solution to it. So embrace the mistakes. It's part of the process. What do you think? Better? Yeah, I don't use gouache or opaque watercolor. They call this opaque watercolor. A little too much on my brush there. Wipe some of that off. But sure, yeah, you could use this. There's no big deal there. Would I use this on the shine for my big silver painting of silver? No, there is no gouache on that at all. I've used nothing but the white of the paper. Partly because I want to enter it into something where that's the rule, and secondly, I just like how the paper looks better than I like the color, like the way the white that I'm putting down doesn't quite match my paper. It's colder, chalkier looking. So it's still got that green color. You see, as it's drying, you can see through the color. And the color comes through, even though they call it bleed-proof white. It's bleed-proof if you are working opaquely, like really putting it on thick. But generally speaking, if I'm thinning it down, I'm wanting some of the color underneath to show through, which is how I'm fading it. But if I put it on full strength, it really would be white. They call it bleed proof because the color underneath doesn't actually come through. If you've ever stained or painted over a knot in woodwork in your home, and you'll eventually see the knot come through, that's the kind of bleeding through that they're talking about. So it's not, the color's not going to eventually come through. It will actually cover, which is the selling feature here. You want to have the paint covered up with this product. I find I have to practice with it a little bit. It's tricky, you know, when you're doing something like I'm doing right now, where you're trying to fade it out. It's hard to get the evenness, but I think it's better. You know, it did bring back a little bit more punch to the children. The values have changed, so I do like that. So in this case, it was actually probably a pretty good solution. Thank you for reminding me of that. If it were painting and I did, you know, I made my background too dark or something, I'd start a new painting. That's what I would do. So I will leave it there and wrap up, I think. Thank you so much for joining me, and sorry for the little hiccup we had with the power outage, but I'll see if I can edit that part out. I don't know what that does to the live streaming, but I'll see if I can edit that part out. So that's our little children, and I think we'll probably be on to a new topic next week because I'll be up north. So I will see you then, and have a wonderful week. Take care.